Now, we have the pleasure of talking with Cllr Donnelly, who is a councillor and is also on the board of Blanchetown Centre for Independent Living. Angela, you're very welcome to Disability Matters.
Thank you very much.
You might start, your big cat is a councillor.
Yes.
So you might start by telling us what the council is and what it does.
Okay.
It's a big question.
It is a big question. Where do you start? Okay. I'm a member of Fingal County Council, so it covers North County Dublin, so Swords, Balbriggan, Rush, Lusk, St Margaret's, De Ward, and also Dublin 15 and a piece of Finglas. I do feel sorry for the piece of Finglas because it's kind of caught between Dublin City Council and Fingal County Council, and also a little bit of Larracon in Lucan. So that's the area it covers. Fingal County Council like to call themselves a county. Drives me nuts.
Yeah.
As a proud Dub, there is no County Fingal. But yeah, we have a full council meeting once a month. So there's 3 what you'd call statutory meetings. So they're the meetings that councillors are bound to attend. That's the job, I suppose.
Right.
Everything else you can, there's briefings, there's quite a lot going on. But there's a monthly statutory meeting in Swords that includes all 40 councillors.
Right. And before you get into all that, what are Fingal responsible for?
Right. They have a huge amount of responsibility. Councillors don't have the same level of responsibility as the council per se. They have responsibility for building houses, but the funding comes from central government.
So they don't get any.
Yeah, which is at the moment we're going through what's called a variation process for the development plan. The development plan is like the blueprint that Fingal used for 5 years in terms of zoning is a big thing in the development plan. So the Minister for Housing has asked every council to zone an extra 50% of their land as residential.
Right.
So at the moment, for example, we're going through that. The council have been asked to zone all this land, and we've meetings next Monday and Tuesday to go through it. And I was just noticing that although we've got a huge land bank down in Dunsink, some of it is owned by the council, some of it is owned by private owners. That was a long-term strategic reserve for residential housing.
Yeah.
We've now moved it up to more short-term because of the housing crisis. Now in that, not on the dump itself, the dump is going to be a regional park. The old dump is going to be a regional park. But in that, Fingal has a lot of land, so we're going to be looking to build a lot of housing. Central government will give us the money for the houses, but we're going to have to come up with the money for the road infrastructure from those houses out onto the main road. So you get all these little anomalies that crop up. So Transport Infrastructure Ireland has said that we need to find the funding through levies. Now levies, Fingal collects their money through levies from developments, so there'd be a percentage that all developers would have to pay per square foot, rates on commercial buildings, rents obviously from their tenants, and then they get the property tax. Now we can choose as councillors to deduct that by 15%, or from next year I think we can raise it by 25%, so there's always murder over that. Sinn Féin, we'd be looking for the maximum reduction every time. Doesn't always work. It's been eroded. It was minus 10% I think, and now it's since I became a councillor 4 years ago, and now we're at minus 2.5% of what we can do. But they're all the fundraising measures that Fingal County Council has. They're also responsible for planning decisions. And I know there's a lot of talk about planning decisions. People will come and say, how come we didn't know about this? What are you going to do about that? It's totally outside the remit of councillors. We have no input, and I'm glad that it is. And that was because of corruption, I suppose, no other way to put it, down through the years.
No, you're right.
They also would have responsibility for the likes of parking, on-street parking within their areas. the paths, the roads, the parks, all of the public areas, the maintenance of those. And then they've a really, really good community department.
Right.
Who are doing some really good stuff. So it would be Fingal's responsibility to build communities, not just to build houses, to build communities, to help communities establish residents associations and give communities a voice. And then obviously they'd have a large part of the remit would be climate action. You know, how can we, I suppose, ensure that measures are put in place to help protect the climate in terms of biodiversity, in terms of building methods, in terms of objectives in the development plan. Like, you can't demolish a house now without really good justification because the carbon emissions from it. Yeah. So all of that, like, it's and I've probably forgotten quite a lot. Yeah.
So it's a very busy role. Mm-hmm. When did you get involved?
4 years ago, last March.
Why?
Why indeed?
Is the big question.
Why indeed? And, you know, I'd love to be able to say it's something that I always wanted to do, and, you know, it's empowering. The real reason is that Paul had won the seat, my husband, who's a TD. Then he became a councillor, or TD, sorry. He got elected as a TD, and a young lad called Aaron O'Rourke was co-opted into the seat, because a party can co-opt. 2 years
into the councillor
into the councillor seat.
Right.
So 2 years into it, Aaron realised he was a newly qualified teacher. He didn't have time. Yeah. And fair play to him, because, you know, there are a lot of people that would keep taking the wage and just not do the work.
Of course.
So he thought, you know, I just can't give this. I can't give this the level of commitment that it deserves. So Paul was scratching his head and going, oh God, you know, as a party, we can't put somebody else in that seat who may not stay until the end of the term. Yeah. So me being very helpful, moment of weakness, I said, if you can't get anybody else, I will be the reserve. Right. But I said, don't tell anybody, because I don't want people to think, oh, well, Angela's out to throwing a hat in the ring, and, you know, so that's grand. And so I became a councillor. That's how
you became a councillor?
Yes.
You were co-opted.
I was co-opted into the position, and at the time I said, I will absolutely guarantee that I will stay until the end of the council term.
And you haven't gone back?
Once the end of the term came, I was like, I'm going nowhere. Yeah. You know, it is quite addictive. You get very into the role.
Of course.
So yeah, I was lucky enough to be re-elected 2 years ago. 2 years ago, nearly. Yeah.
And the elections come up when?
Every 5 years.
Right.
It's not like the Dáil. It's set in stone. Council elections are every 5 years.
That's good.
The council can't fall
and
the way the Dáil can.
What's the make-up of the council? For example, there's different wards, isn't there?
There is. There's 3 different local electoral areas in Dublin 15. I think there's 7 in all, between the North County Dublin. So we have 3. So we've got Castleknock, we've got Blanchetown Mulhuddart, and we've got the Ongar ward, which covers Hartstown, Huntstown, Little Pace and parts of Clonsilla, and that's the ward that I represent.
Oh, very good.
So I think we've 16 councillors in Dublin 15. In the council in general, we have 40, 13 of which are women, which is a big focus for me to try and get more women in. Yeah.
What's a day like?
I
Start very, very early.
I suppose it depends. This morning I was up early because it's been a busy week, and it's great when you're out and you're attending different events, and like I was here for a board meeting yesterday, but then I start getting twitchy because I'm missing emails and I'm getting responses from representations that I want to get back to people. Yeah. So this morning I was up and I cleared quite a bit of that, so you know it kind of gives you headspace then. Yeah. So like for instance today there's a Think Before You Buy lunch in Driocht at the moment. I might get over to that after this. Then at 1:45 we have a presentation on Dunsink, because the council are trying to get their ducks in a row to put in a local area plan for it, so that it's passed in the variation process next Monday and Tuesday. Then there's a deputation coming into the council chamber from Castleknock Tidy Towns, and then we have a local area meeting. So we've 1 full council meeting a month, and we've 2 local area meetings in Dublin 15. So today is one of those meetings. And then tonight I have a, which isn't, well, not really linked to the councillor role, but I have a CUMA meeting, so a branch meeting for Sinn Féin. So today is a busy day.
When you get home and Paul gets home, do you talk politics?
We do quite a bit.
Right.
Like Paul, the past 2 days was really, really late coming back from the dog because there was votes on both days, and he came in and I was actually watching This Week, the TV3. It's called This Week. Vinnie Brown's old show. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I was watching that and Paul says, "Oh, please turn that off." I can't listen to anymore.
I don't know.
Please turn that off. So yeah, I suppose we do. It's easier that the two of us are in politics.
Yeah.
It's easier. Like Paul's been involved in representational politics, so he's been representing the community for a long time. I'm relatively new to it in the 4 years.
Yeah.
But whilst Paul was doing that, like I remember having conversations with him saying, "Do you really need to go to this? Do you have to go to everything? What are we going to do tomorrow? Don't tell me you're out again." Whereas the fact that it's the two of us now, the two of us are trotting off to Clonsilla Tidy Towns and Ongar Tidy Towns and the Royal Canal clean up, and
I was just going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Outside of the politics, the council, you get involved in all these projects, clean ups here, there, everywhere.
Do you know what? I think they're a really good way for people to get involved in their community.
Absolutely.
And believe it or not, I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I really enjoyed them because you're meeting people, you're having a bit of crack. A lot of them now sit down and have a cup of coffee or tea afterwards, which is lovely because you've got that team building element of it. You're getting out in the fresh air. And like I love it. Like we went to Galway on Saturday morning. The Dubs were playing on Sunday. That's another big love of ours. And we decided I'd got a voucher for my birthday. So we said, you know what, we'll go down, we make a weekend of it. And before we went, I said, can we get in an hour with Clonsilla Tidy Towns? Because I just didn't want to miss it. We got in an hour with Clonsilla Tidy Towns before we went.
So you're definitely an addictive person.
Possibly.
Yeah. Do you ever get fed up, Brent?
I get fed up with attitudes,
right,
I suppose is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And people, obviously, they don't understand the ins and outs, and they get very frustrated. Most people, when you explain what a situation is, they have a better understanding.
Right.
But I think people don't quite understand what the role is, and they have very high expectations. And I'll say to people all the time, I will do my best for you. I will ask the question. And people say, God, you're really good, you're really quick to get onto things. And I am, but I don't always succeed.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that power. So I will ask, I will lobby, I will torment, I will be persistent, but I can't guarantee that I get results.
You're depending on someone else for the answer.
Absolutely. And the most frustrating part of the job at the moment is housing.
I get you. Of course. And it's most frustrating for everyone all over the country.
It's heartbreaking when people come to you and, and really, I suppose, one of the big gaps, I think, is that you've got people who have gone through addiction services. They come out the other side, they've done 2 years, they're totally clean, they're ready to get on with their lives, and there is nowhere to put them.
Yeah.
And even from an economic viewpoint, it doesn't make sense for the state to not fund something for those people so that they can get on with their lives. Because if they fall back into addiction through the frustration and everything else, it's going to cost the state a hell of a lot more money.
Yeah.
And that is heartbreaking because people have worked so hard. Yeah. They've worked so hard, but it's heartbreaking.
It's crazy. I say if you see a bit of that.
Yeah.
We work for Blanchardstown Centre for Independent Living, and obviously people with disability are our concern. Mm-hmm. There are issues around the place that are of interest to them, like safe footpaths, like safe crossing, and so on. If they have an issue, how do they get in touch? Right,
that is one of my number one pieces of work, and it's work that I love doing because I can get results.
Brilliant.
I went, actually, one of the clients from BCIL, she didn't come to me through BCIL. She just sent an email, Facebook post, carrier pigeon, just get in touch with me. But I walked with her last year from her home in Whitestown up to Little on Blakestown Way. Yeah. And looked at all the pats because she's a walker, and she was really struggling, and sent a report into Fingal, and nearly all of those issues were rectified.
Wow.
Last week I walked with her from Whitestown to the post office here in the village, and I was just saying to the girls yesterday, I can see a lot of the pats that we highlighted marked yellow.
Yeah.
So they've already looked at them, they're already looking at fixing them, and that is something that Fingal are really good at.
Yeah.
If they know that somebody who is a wheelchair user or has limited ability, limited sight, walks a certain route and finds it difficult, they will do whatever they can. There was another little guy, I think he's in the group in Castleknock, the spina bifida and hydrocephalitis group, and he lived in Honda, and he had said he struggles going from his house to the shop, and in the programme of works last year, that whole stretch of footpath was replaced.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's
so
big.
Yeah, it was big, and that was quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
So they will try to do their best. I know that same woman that goes to the post office here, she said to me about a crossing, right here, at the monument, crossing that road. And I asked Breda, who's actually the councillor, Breda Hanaphy for this area, to put it in, and I just noticed actually this is hot off the press. It's not for, well, it's all right. By the time this show goes out, it'll be past this meeting. But they have recognised that does need a crossing, so they'll look at next year's programme of works to fund it, because sometimes it's not a case of they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's a case of there's one pot of money. One pot of money, and how do we best use that pot of money? And it might be a case that crossing, a pedestrian crossing, is needed there, but there might be somewhere else that is more dangerous and that might get the funding. But I do think that crossing is very it's very badly needed. There's no way to cross over.
It's needed for traffic also.
Yes.
Which is important.
Yeah.
The other thing you do, if you're not busy enough, you're on the board here in Blanchardstown Centre for Independent Living. I am. How did that come about?
This was the first board that I became a member of. I'm on over 10 now. Right. But I have a real graw for BCIL. It was the first board. I came in, it might have been International Women's Day event.
Okay.
And got speaking to Antoinette, and who was very persuasive.
Yeah.
I've been on the board, I'd say well over 3 years now at this stage. I'm the secretary of the board now. So it's a lovely board.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding. Difficulties with funding.
Obviously.
Huge difficulties with funding. And we could do so much more if we had more funding. But it's a great team, and it's so important as an organisation because it does enable people to live at home independently.
Yeah.
And there's so many things, I've learned an awful lot, but there's so many things that people just don't realise. And I remembered there was an eradication of poverty event one time.
Yeah.
And there was a poem read out from a woman, and it was about, the whole thing about heating or eating, but she explained that it's a case of she has to plug in her electric wheelchair. She needs to plug in her electric hoist. So there's all of these different pieces of equipment that need power, and it's more expensive to have a disability, and it makes you think, And as I said, that people don't understand the role of a councillor. How could they? They're not doing it. The same way as people don't understand what it's like for people with disabilities, what it's like to try and walk down a path and come to a lip, how it's like a mountain to climb for them, what it's like to not have enough money to charge that vital equipment. So, I think the work that's done here is really, really vital.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the lobbying and getting the message out, and making people more aware of, the need for universality when you're talking about paths, ramp instead of steps, when you're talking about let's build all the houses that they are accessible, let's make all the doors wider,
That's a big thing.
Yeah. Huge. I had a twin pram at one stage.
Had you?
That was the closest I ever got. The side by side.
Yeah.
That was the closest I ever got to knowing how difficult it was to navigate footpaths where the trees are too close to the wall, or to get into the doors of shops. That's people's lives. That's their everyday experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Angela, thanks so much for sharing.
You're very welcome.
A very interesting chat. I really, really enjoyed it. And thanks for talking to us at Disability Matters.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
It's our pleasure.